Okay, for these parallel lines cut by a transversal, the previous video had all congruent angles. This is mixed angles. So some of the angles are going to be supplementary, while other angles will be congruent. We need to determine their relationship to set up the appropriate equation and solve for x. So reminder, supplementary angles are angles that are next to each other that add up to a straight angle, which is 180 degrees. Congruent angles are two angles or more than two angles that have the same angle measure or that are equal. So let's look at a number 1. So here we have two parallel lines. Here's the interior angles. This is the exterior. We have this transversal right here. And you should notice that the two identified angles, 4x and 6x, are on the same side of the transversal inside the parallel lines, making them same side interior angles. Same side interior angles are supplementary. Another thing I want to point out is as you look at these angles, you should notice that this angle is an acute angle right here, while this angle is an obtuse angle. So we can clearly see one is smaller than the other. So together they will add up to equal 180. So the equation that we would set up is 4x plus 6x, taking these two angles, and have them equal 180. Then we follow all the algebraic steps to solve for x. First, we combine like terms here to get 10x. And then to get x isolated by itself, we divide both sides by 10, resulting with x is equal to 18. Just like the previous problems that were congruent, then we have to find the other two angles. So we know that angle HFC, so HFC, meaning 6x, we're going to replace the x and we're going to substitute in the 18. So we have to do 6 times 18 to get that angle measure. 6 times 18 is equal to 108. So the angle measure of this first angle is 108. To figure out the angle measure of DBG, which is this one right here, 4x, again, we're going to substitute in 18 for x. So 4 times 18, and that equals 72. So notice this time the two angles do not have the same angle measure. One's 108, the other one is 72. We can double check our work because we know that both of these angles together should add up to 180. So let's find the sum of these two values. 108 plus 72 does indeed equal 180. So we were correct. Okay, now let's look at number 2. Number 2, we have the transversal here. We have the interior angles in between the parallel lines, the exterior outside of the parallel lines. And we see that we have one angle on one side of the transversal and the other one on the outside. These are alternate exterior angles. They're on the outside of the parallel lines, opposite sides of the transversal. Alternate exterior angles are congruent. So I also want you to notice that as we look at this angle, we notice that it's obtuse. It's greater than 90 degrees. And this one's also obtuse. So those two angles are congruent. They're going to have the same angle measure. Since they're congruent, our equation is 6x is going to equal 3x plus 72. So again, if we follow the algebraic steps to solve for x, we see that x is equal to 24. Again, to find the angle measures that are being identified, angle ABC, if we look at the diagram carefully, we notice that that angle, so we have A over here, B, and C, this one is the 3x plus 72. So I'm going to substitute in the 24 for x, so 3 times 24, and then we add the 72. Let's see what we get. We have 3 times the 24 plus the 72. We get 144. Because these angles are congruent, meaning they have the same angle measure, the other angle, which is 6x, let's substitute in the 24. We should also come up with the same angle measure of 144. Let's verify that. 6 times 24 is 144. So this is proof that both angles are congruent. Okay, let's go to number 3. So these parallel lines are vertical. They're going up and down. Inside of the parallel lines, these are the interior angles. Outside of the parallel lines are the exterior angles. I noticed that the angle 20x and 16x are on alternate sides of the transversal. One's interior, one's exterior. So these here, I'm going to just look carefully. This looks like an acute angle, less than 90. And this one is obtuse angle greater than 90. So they're different angle measures. Something else that we learned or that we labeled in class was vertical angles, angles across from each other, have the same angle measure. So both of these would be 20x. These correspond, so these would be 20x. I can now clearly see that the two angles are different. They are next to each other, making a linear pair or a straight line. So that means that both of these angles are supplementary. They will add up to 180. So my equation that I would set up is 20x plus 16x together will add up to 180. So then if I solve this algebraically, I'm going to combine these two terms, 20x and 16x would be 36x. Variables with variables and numbers with numbers. And then to solve for x, to isolate the variable, I have to do the inverse. The inverse of multiplication is to divide. So then I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 36. So here x is equal to, if I take 180 and divide that by 36, we get 5. And I know angle ABD is the same thing as 20x. So I am going to substitute in a 5 for the 20. And 20 times 5 is 100. And then angle AFE, which is this one up here, is 16x. Again, to evaluate, I'm just going to do 16 times 5. And knowing that supplementary angles equals 180, if this is 100, this should equal 80. So let's confirm that. 16 times 5 is 80. So knowing how these angles relate, knowing if they are congruent or supplementary helps us, 1, set up the equation, and then 2, predetermine if these two angles are going to be the same or if they are going to add up to 180.